The ability to smell in many ways is like a form of eyesight, but without the use of eyes. Now that may sound like an idiotic analogy on the surface, and it is. In its modern, developed form, it is a way to ascertain information about the environment around you. It is multidirectional and can dynamically and rapidly detect changes in the immediate environment. It has its own set of highly specialized and unique sensitive tissues located on the face, and it has a long history of successive adaptations and evolutionary developments which have shaped it into the highly distinctive and pervasive organ we observe today. Again, similar to eyes, they are a sort of evolutionary cornerstone, an adaptation so crucial and utilitarian that its inclusion is almost a rule for most forms of complex tetrapoidal life. In this way, it also shares similarities with the vertebrae, the tooth, the lung, and earlier lung-adjacent organs, etc. All of these physiological developments were so profoundly successful in their initial manifestations that they came to outcompete many life forms that were bereft of their gifts. These cornerstone adaptations soon came to be found in large shares of the biota of Earth, in some cases even being the defining characteristic of entire branches of phylogeny. For example, the entire subphyla Vertebrata of the chordates requires all of its members to possess a backbone, as might be assumed from the name Vertebrata. But for this video, the crucial similarity that the sense of smell shares with the sense of sight is that the efficacy and development of these respective faculties varies greatly from species to species. To give a rather crude analogy, evolution can be thought of like a half-empty canister of water tied to the back of a hiker, walking up a sheer hill. The hiker may experience sudden changes in elevation or direction to maneuver around obstacles. This would of course shift the body of water in the canister, causing much turbulation and disturbing the surface of the water. However, after a short amount of time at a constant elevation and speed, the water would eventually resettle in the canister as it has acclimated to the new environment. The elevation itself may determine the degree at which the water rests along the cantilevered walls of the canister, and its volume may determine the height of the canister's water table. But the water, after an initial period of tumultuous change and evolution, eventually acclimates to its new state of being and returns to assuming a still, flat plane along the surface of its body. This can be likened to how species respond via adaptation to novel environments or new changes in existing environments. For the aforementioned traits of vision and smell, this is no different. A species for whom light can provide an illuminating and informative account of its surroundings will naturally develop highly effective eyesight. Eagles and other birds of prey are a great example of this. When gliding high above the canopies and hilltops of the land, light which has blanketed the surface below will reflect back into the highly granulated retina of the eagle, saturating the countless photon-sensitive rod and cone cells which stud its amber curvature, providing them with a bird's eye view of their hunting and mating grounds. On the other hand, a species for whom light has no use may have its eyes slowly atrophy and wither away. After all, why bother maintaining this costly tissue and easily exploited soft fleshy weak spots right in the center of your face for no reason? Primarily, the reason why a species will have no use for visible light is because it inhabits a particularly dark environment. However, in many cases, a secondary sense will often rise up and take the place of the eyes. Famously, in many species of bat, the ears have stepped up as prime environment sensing organ. But in the mole family, the newly nominated sense has been the sense of smell, filling the shoes that eyesight had historically donned for its land-dwelling ancestors. A mole's sense of smell bestows it with all the information it could need about its immediate environment. I hope you now see the need for my long, drawn-out, rambling analogy of likening eyes to noses at the beginning of the video. This strange-looking apparatus allows them to ascertain almost as much about their surroundings as our eyes allow us to determine about ours, and in some respects, they actually know more. But when the cost of this great all-knowing nose has only been afforded to them by the loss of their eyes and descent into subsequent blindness, has this been worth it? Now, obviously the answer is yes, as moles primarily live underground and couldn't see more than an inch in front of their face even if they had eyes, but just indulge me anyway. So, how and why did moles specifically spec their evolutionary points into the olfactory tree when they could have taken many other routes to evolutionary success? Well, to put it plainly, moles likely evolved an incredible sense of smell for the same reason that birds of prey evolved incredible vision, for hunting. When you're deeply entrenched in the earth, attempting to eke out a living as a previously land-adapted organism is tough work. You need to reorganize your efforts and evolve different methods of predation in this dark place. Of course, the previously reliable sense of light-based eyesight is all but useless here given the fact that you're multiple feet below the ground. Life in the recesses of the deep ocean has much the same issue as the mole does. No light can reach into the mole's burrow, and any form of eyesight is essentially useless. The usefulness of hearing too is also questionable, as the ability to hear relies upon vibrations traveling through the air and eventually being transmitted to the ear of an animal, whereupon it vibrates the eardrum, which produces the sensory stimulation of hearing something. Underground, this is a bit of a quandary, as the moles must themselves burrow and root around, which creates a great many vibrations, diluting out the soundscape of the other living creatures underground, which detracts from the potency of the mole's hearing. Also, air is of course a restricted medium underground, and relying upon it as the primary method of sensory exploration is untenable for the mole. Completely incidentally though, moles do actually tend to have quite good hearing, though their sense of hearing pales in comparison to their sense of smell. The combination of the two allows for the mole to effectively traverse the underground biome while still keeping an ear and a nostril out for some grub. Aside from just the sheer potency of its nose, the mole also has what's known as stereo smelling. The concept of stereo sensation should be quite familiar to you given that you're capable of perceiving the 3D world, I hope. The ability to see stereoscopically is a given. I mean, eyes would be quite useless if all you could ever see was a thin, flat Z-axis cross-section in just one direction. Unless you're visually impaired, you can probably perceive the world in a cone of vision in front of your face, being able to distinguish what you can see and where you can see it. Similarly, your sense of hearing, unless you're hearing impaired, can allow you to pinpoint the direction of a sound in your immediate environment. However, most species are not capable of smelling stereoscopically. For example, you might be able to smell a fart in a room, but only when you've directly encountered it wafting into the plane of your nostrils. You could not, for example, smell your friend farting to your 8 o'clock 10 meters away. That is, of course, until the smell eventually wafted in your direction and traveled up your nose. You may, however, be able to stereoscopically hear the audible rip of your friend's oscillating gluteal orifice. Fortunately for the mole, it could smell anyone's farts from any direction anywhere around it. This stereo smelling ability does pay dividends when it comes to hunting, as the mole is able to locate its subterranean prey with ease. Whether it be above, below, or to the sides of it, the mole is able to sniff out prey from an impressive distance away. The mole's sense of smell is so potent in fact that it can even hinder the ability of humans to catch and trap it. When someone lays down a trap planning to catch a mole, the mole is actually able to smell human skin cells on the trap and know to avoid it. That is some astonishingly potent smelling. Also, it allows the mole to perceive its environment around it in more detail than we can, as I alluded to earlier. Only with the use of microscopes are we able to perceive and distinguish between cells. Another useful adaptation that allows moles to do this is the motility of their noses. Moles can wiggle their noses around, similarly to how you could move your head around to survey and perceive your environment. The mole can move its nose around, allowing it to create a larger cone of awareness. Moles also just have an incredible amount of raw olfactory horsepower, possessing an incredible density of scent receptors. This gives it a sort of higher resolution smelling ability, similar to how, generally speaking, the more rod and cone ganglion complexes a species possesses in their eyes, the higher resolution and image their brains can create. Also, having a larger number of scent receptors allows them to perceive similar concentrations of molecules present in a given volume of air, which allows them to smell things from further away. Now, as to the question of why moles evolved this incredible sense of smell, much can be gleaned from their proposed evolutionary history. The ancestor of modern moles is posited to be a shrew or shrew-like animal. Small mousy creatures, although not rodents themselves, shrews already had quite an exceptional sense of smell before their bouts of burrowing. This proved useful in a world of hulking reptilian monstrosities which roamed the land. Although admittedly, shrews likely didn't have much to worry about in the way of predation from dinosaurs, given their miniature size. Their sense of smell did, however, provide a great way of locating potential prey items, justifying the development of a powerful ability to smell. This likely provided a perfect jumping-off point for the further development of the smelling ability of ensuing descendant species. This is kind of like how cetaceans such as dolphins simply repurposed their already existing lungs for the rigors of underwater living. The mole may have taken an already great system for environmental perception, i.e. a great sense of smell, and simply adapted it further for its new home. Not fixing something that was never broken in the first place is a favored staple of evolutionary history.